The moment she walked into the glass doors of Harlington Technologies, no one could have guessed who she really was. Maya, young, ambitious, and full of quiet confidence, donned a simple blazer and carried a modest tote bag, her appearance blending seamlessly into the bustling crowd of entry-level temps and interns flooding the building every Monday morning. But Maya wasn't there for a temp gig. She was the founder's daughter, the rightful heir to a legacy few outside this office knew existed. Yet today she was invisible. Treated like a temp, overlooked, underestimated, a ghost wandering through her own future empire. Her father, Charles Harlington, had built this tech giant from the ground up, transforming it into a powerhouse known for cutting-edge innovation and fierce competition. But Charles was a private man, and his daughter had grown up watching him from afar, learning lessons about grit and resilience not from plush offices, but from the sidelines. Now at 24, Maya had finally insisted to be seen, not as a privileged heiress, but as someone willing to prove herself on the front lines. And so she arrived at the office, her badge simply reading Maya J. Temp, a title that didn't reflect her true worth but one she wore like armor. The first few days were a test of patience and pride. She answered phones, sorted mail, refilled coffee, and sat quietly in meetings taking notes and observing the intricate dance of office politics. Colleagues barely glanced her way, whispering behind hands, some barely hiding their disdain. "Who's the new temp? Thinks she's something special." The sneers and sideways glances were subtle, but Maya felt every one of them. Still, she stayed silent, focusing on learning every detail she could, from coding bugs in the IT department to marketing strategies being hashed out in the conference rooms. Her goal was clear: understand every inch of the company before revealing herself. But the environment was harsher than she expected. Tasks assigned to her were menial at best, sometimes outright dismissive. When she tried to contribute ideas, they were met with polite nods that quickly turned to oblivion. One morning, as she attempted to share a suggestion during a team brainstorm, a senior project manager interrupted. "Thanks, Maya, but maybe focus on your admin duties for now." The words stung, a reminder that perception was reality here. Maya's frustration grew, but her resolve hardened. She knew that earning respect in this space meant more than talent. It required navigating a maze of skepticism and bias, much of it unspoken but palpably felt. One afternoon, a company-wide email announced a surprise leadership workshop, mandatory for all staff and temps alike. Maya saw an opportunity. This workshop wasn't just a chance to learn, it was a stage. And stages were where reputations were made. On the day of the workshop, Maya walked into the sleek training room filled with familiar faces, some curious, others openly dismissive. The facilitator, a well-known executive coach, started with a question: "Who here is ready to lead? To challenge the status quo?" Maya's hand shot up, her eyes locking with those who doubted her. As she spoke about vision, perseverance, and innovation, a few heads turned, some in surprise, others in admiration. For the first time she tasted the power of her own voice. But the breakthrough was short-lived. The door swung open mid-session, and a hush fell over the room as Charles Harlington himself entered, his presence commanding instant respect and quiet fear. He scanned the room, eyes landing on Maya. "I hear we have a temp with a lot to say," he said, voice low but firm. The room stiffened. Whispers erupted. "That's the founder's daughter? No way." Maya's heart hammered, adrenaline surging. This was the moment she'd been preparing for, the reveal that could change everything. But before she could respond, the fire alarm blared, cutting through the tension like a knife. Chaos erupted as the room emptied, people rushing out confused and startled. Outside, employees gathered on the sidewalk, murmurs swirling about the drill. But amid the crowd, Maya spotted something that froze her blood. A group of men in suits whispering urgently, eyes scanning the building like predators hunting prey. One spoke into a phone, voice low and clipped. "She's here. We need to move fast." Suddenly, the safe space she'd carved out shattered. Maya knew her fight was only beginning. What were these men after? Why were they so focused on her? And how would she protect herself while proving she belonged, not as a temp, but as the founder's daughter and rightful leader? The answers lay ahead, but for now, Maya was caught in a storm she never saw coming. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The fire alarm's shrill echo still rang in Maya's ears as she stood among the mass of employees gathered outside Harlington Technologies. The men in suits she spotted moments before seemed out of place, their tense whispers and scanning glances a sharp contrast to the confused, chatting crowd around them. Maya's instincts screamed that whatever was coming wasn't a coincidence, it was a calculated move aimed directly at her. She tried to blend into the group, but her heart pounded so loudly she was certain it betrayed her. Just then her phone vibrated with an unknown number flashing on the screen. She hesitated for a moment before answering. A distorted voice whispered urgently, "Maya, you're in danger. Leave now and don't trust anyone." Then the call abruptly ended, leaving a heavy silence that felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. Maya scanned the crowd for someone she could trust, but the sea of faces felt unfamiliar, even hostile. The truth was sinking in. Being the founder's daughter wasn't a shield here, it made her a target. As the fire drill wound down, most employees began to file back inside, their conversations shifting to theories about the alarm, but Maya stayed rooted in place, her mind racing. She remembered overhearing a heated phone conversation between her father's assistant and a shadowy voice a few days earlier. Something about a takeover, a threat to the company's future, and a plan to remove anyone in the way, including family. That conversation wasn't paranoia, it was a warning. Now, with those suited men lurking, she understood the danger was real and immediate. She slipped away from the crowd, moving quickly but cautiously toward the employee parking lot. Her goal was simple: get to her car and find a safe place to think. But as she rounded a corner, a hand grabbed her arm. She spun around, ready to fight, but it was only Ethan, a junior developer she'd met briefly during the workshop. His face was pale, his eyes darting nervously. "Maya, you need to come with me. There's more going on than you realize." Before she could respond, Ethan pulled out a small flash drive and pressed it into her palm. "This has everything: emails, contracts, plans. It shows who's trying to take over your dad's company. You can't trust anyone else." Maya's fingers curled tightly around the drive, a surge of adrenaline propelling her forward. Together, they ducked into a nearby alley as the suited men approached, scanning the parking lot with mounting frustration. For the first time, Maya felt the true weight of her legacy, not just the promise of a company to inherit, but a battlefield she had to survive. Back at her temporary safe spot, a quiet cafe with no connection to Harlington Technologies, Maya and Ethan pored over the files on his encrypted laptop. The evidence was damning: forged documents, secret meetings with rival corporations, and plans to discredit Charles Harlington and seize control of the company by exploiting internal politics and external influence. Maya's jaw tightened. These were more than just corporate schemers. They were merciless, willing to destroy anyone who stood in their way. But there was hope. Buried in the files was a key piece of information: an upcoming board meeting where a critical vote would determine the company's future leadership. If Maya could get there and present the truth, she might stop the coup before it started. But getting into that room would mean exposing herself, risking everything she had worked for in silence. And more dangerously, it meant going head-to-head with powerful enemies who would stop at nothing. As the cafe door swung open, a chill ran down Maya's spine. She looked up to see a familiar face, Charles Harlington himself, eyes filled with a mixture of concern and urgency. "Maya," he said quietly, "we don't have much time. You need to be ready. They know you're here now." His words were a warning but also a call to action. Maya's journey from invisible temp to rightful heir was accelerating faster than she ever imagined. But just as she began to plan their next move, the cafe lights flickered violently. The sound of glass shattering nearby sent everyone diving for cover. Outside, a black SUV sped away, leaving behind a cloud of smoke and questions that had no easy answers. Maya's world had erupted into chaos, and the path ahead was more dangerous than ever. What will Maya and her father do to protect the company? Who exactly is behind this coup, and how far will they go? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The shattering glass and roaring engine of the black SUV fading into the distance marked the moment Maya realized the battle for Harlington Technologies wasn't just corporate, it was personal, and it was deadly. The cafe, once a refuge, was now a war zone of flashing police lights and swirling questions. Charles Harlington pulled Maya close, his voice steady but grave. "We need to move. Now. They slipped through the back door amid chaos, disappearing into the shadows of the city. Maya's mind was racing as they made their way to a safe house, an anonymous apartment miles from the towering Harlington headquarters. Here, away from prying eyes, they finally reviewed the files again. The evidence was damning. A shadow board faction, led by a powerful rival investor named Gregory Vaughn, had been orchestrating the takeover for months. Vaughn was ruthless, with deep ties to private security firms and a reputation for crushing dissent. Worse, Maya realized with a sinking heart, some of her father's closest allies had been compromised, their loyalties bought with promises and threats. But Maya wasn't just a target, she was a symbol. Vaughn knew that removing her would shake the company's foundations, sending a message that no one was untouchable. Yet, the daughter who'd once been ignored as a temp, was now the linchpin of the entire battle. Over the next few days, Maya and Charles prepared for the upcoming board meeting, the final showdown. But they had to be careful. Every move was watched, every conversation potentially monitored. To stay one step ahead, Maya enlisted help from an old family friend, Ava, a cybersecurity expert who had once protected the Harlington empire from digital threats. Ava immediately began fortifying their communications and digging for dirt on Vaughn and his allies. "If we expose their schemes first, the board will have no choice but to side with you," Ava said, eyes sharp as she scrolled through encrypted files. The clock was ticking. But then an unexpected twist. Maya's closest friend at the company, Lauren, the one person who had shown kindness despite Maya's temp status, reached out in secret. Lauren's voice trembled as she revealed her own discovery. Gregory Vaughn's plans go deeper than a hostile takeover. He's involved in illegal dealings that could bring down the entire company, and possibly implicate some high-profile government officials. The stakes were escalating. This wasn't just a business coup, it was a web of corruption that threatened to engulf everyone connected. The night before the board meeting, Maya barely slept. She rehearsed her speech, memorized the evidence, and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. But just as dawn broke, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're walking into a trap. Watch your back at the meeting." A friend. Her blood ran cold. Who could this friend be? And how deep did the conspiracy run? The boardroom filled with tension as Maya entered, facing a sea of skeptical faces. Some allies, others enemies cloaked in suits. Gregory Vaughn sat smugly at the head of the table, his eyes gleaming with calculated menace. As Maya began her presentation, exposing the corruption and the attempted coup, the room erupted into chaos. Vaughn smirked and called for a recess. But just before she could step out, the lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. When the emergency lights flickered back on moments later, one shocking sight greeted Maya. Her father, Charles Harlington, was slumped over, unconscious, a glass shattered at his feet. The room froze in horror. Maya's heart dropped. Had someone attacked her father? Was this part of the trap she was warned about? What happened to Charles Harlington? Was this an accident or something more sinister? And how will Maya survive the storm brewing around her? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The room's heavy silence was broken only by the sharp intake of breaths as Maya rushed to her father's side. Charles Harlington's face was pale, his eyes fluttering but unfocused. Someone had poisoned him, or at the very least, incapacitated him just as Maya was about to expose the rot eating through the company's core. Panic and chaos erupted around her. Security scrambled, board members whispered accusations, and Gregory Vaughn's cold smile deepened, knowing his plan had struck a devastating blow. Maya's heart pounded, not just for her father but for the company, for everything they had fought to protect. She steadied herself, gripping the edge of the table. This was no longer just a battle for power. It was a fight for survival. Emergency medical personnel arrived swiftly, rushing Charles to the hospital amid a storm of flashing cameras and swirling rumors. Maya was left in the boardroom facing a room divided, some shocked, some opportunistic. But she refused to be broken. Turning to the remaining board members, she took a deep breath and said, "This isn't over. I will fight for my father, for this company, and for the truth." Outside the hospital, Maya met with Ava and Ethan, forming an unbreakable alliance. Ava's cybersecurity skills uncovered that Vaughn had orchestrated the blackout and planted a traceable toxin in Charles's drink. Meanwhile, Ethan, digging through corporate records, discovered a secret offshore account linked to Vaughn, funding illegal operations and bribing officials to secure the takeover. But just as they prepared to expose Vaughn's full corruption, Maya received an anonymous message: "They're coming for you next. Trust no one." The weight of that warning was undeniable. Maya knew the fight was far from over. The company's future hung in the balance, and so did her own safety. With renewed determination, Maya prepared for a final confrontation, a showdown that would reveal not only who was truly loyal, but also what sacrifices she was willing to make. The night before the decisive board vote, Maya returned to the empty headquarters to gather evidence and make a plan. But deep in the shadows, she was watched by an unseen figure, someone she thought was an ally. A hand reached out, silencing her phone before she could call for help. The last thing Maya saw was a cold, familiar face leaning in close, whispering, "You should have trusted me." Who has betrayed Maya at the most crucial moment? How will she escape this trap? And will the company survive the storm? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The cold whisper in Maya's ear sent a shock through her body, a betrayal from someone she trusted most. Her mind raced, trying to place the face, the voice, the moments they'd shared. But there was no time for questions. The grip tightening around her wrist was firm, unyielding. She was dragged into the shadows of the empty headquarters, the sterile walls closing in like a trap. Panic surged, but Maya fought to steady her breathing. Years of silent observation, resilience, and determination now fueled her will to survive. In that moment, clarity struck. This wasn't just about a company or a boardroom battle. It was a war for truth, justice, and her family's legacy. The figure who had betrayed her was Lauren, her closest friend, whose kindness had been a mask for ambition and fear. Lauren confessed in a low, regretful voice that she'd been blackmailed by Gregory Vaughn, forced to turn against Maya to save herself. Maya's heart broke, but she steeled herself. Forgiveness would have to wait. Survival came first. Summoning every ounce of courage, Maya struck back, using a hidden pepper spray she'd carried since the first day at Harlington Technologies. The sudden move caught Lauren off guard, and Maya bolted into the corridor, sprinting toward the security office. Using Ava's remote override, she locked the doors behind her, buying precious minutes. Meanwhile, the hospital called with urgent news. Charles Harlington was awake and recovering. He had already authorized the release of damning documents exposing Vaughn's crimes to the authorities and the media. Empowered by her father's strength and Ava's digital fortress, Maya live-streamed a compelling testimony from the security office, proof of the coup, the sabotage, and the betrayal within their ranks. The video spread like wildfire, igniting public outrage and forcing law enforcement to act swiftly. Gregory Vaughn and his conspirators were arrested before the day's end. The board voted unanimously to reinstate Charles Harlington's leadership, with Maya appointed as Vice President of Strategy, a symbol of new leadership and resilience. Standing at the company's headquarters days later, Maya looked out over the city skyline, the weight of her journey settling on her shoulders but also a sense of triumph. She had stepped out of the shadows of doubt, transformed from the overlooked Temp to a leader who had saved her father's legacy and the company's future. The battle had tested her faith, her strength, and her heart. But it had also proven that courage and integrity can shatter even the most fortified walls. True leadership isn't given. It's earned through resilience, honesty, and the courage to face betrayal and adversity head-on. No matter the obstacles or the doubts cast by others, standing firm in your values and fighting for what's right will always pave the way to victory and respect. The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths.